Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hello there, everybody. Okay, hey, how you doing? All right, we're here today to talk a little bit about something that a friend of mine posted on Facebook recently. It has to do with Wisconsin. I think it's kind of an interesting kind of thing to bring up and talk about. A couple reasons why. Potentially because this initiative and referendum stuff could be used potentially to possibly help Stephen and Brendan. Maybe. I think it could possibly also be used, in light of what happened at Eagle Nation Cycles and everything. I think it could be used so that people could start a petition to get, legislation or whatever, or to get, more rules made so that officers that are compromised in a raid, in a hostage situation and stuff, who get compromised and are hit and that sort of thing, are not left in the melee in their compromised state. So that's like one thing, that could also be useful if Wisconsin had this particular thing, this initiative and referendum, this ability to do this. If the people of Wisconsin had the ability to. As it is right now, they don't. And what I'm going to read to you right now is a post from someone where it explains kind of what happened and why it is that Wisconsin didn't end up getting this initiative and referendum, legislation essentially. And what it would have done is it would allow, the people of Wisconsin, if there was something they felt strongly about, and they got together and created a petition, and it got enough signatures that it would allow them to potentially put up something to be, to become legislation to address the issue, right? It's, I think, seeing as we live in a democracy, for the people, by the people, this seems like an eminently practical thing. So I was surprised that Wisconsin is one of 3 states where the voters decided to vote to not have this right, and it all happened a long time ago, back 105 years ago. But this post will go through and explain some of that and what happened back in basically 1915, 1916. So basically, here we go. I'm going to start reading it, and you guys can hear what it has to say. Let's see. It begins by talking about to do anything against such a corrupt system, the people have to be the driving force, because the government isn't going to limit its own power, so to speak. You have to be able to present the majority of people what the majority of people want, whatever it is you're searching for. This brings me to petitions. There are many circulating for Avery Dassey relief. I have been critical at times because it seemed to me that any petition signed by a non-resident is not presentable, and this made the whole thing as a feel-good story. But never did I anticipate how the true nature of things are. Sadly, I am sure mostly unknown is that Wisconsin is one of only 3 non-referendums, non-initiative states. Okay, voters of Wisconsin have voted on 2 ballot measures, Question 2 and Question 8, in 1914, to authorize a statewide initiative referendum process in Wisconsin. Okay, so they were these two. Question 2 and Question 8 were on the ballot in 1914, and they were based. You'll see how much of a percentage they received, and you'll see why and what was going on at the time. So it's unfortunate, but if these things could get tabled again, it would be good. Name Wisconsin is practically synonymous with progressivism, yet this state has never had a statewide initiative and referendum process. Indeed, it is one of only 3 states where voters turned down their opportunity to get it. Texas and Rhode Island are the others. The circumstances were as follows. In 1907, Lieutenant Governor W.D. Connor and State Senator W.D. Brazeau took up the cause and secured approval in the state Senate by a 19-5 vote, but lost in the lower house. The progressive reformers had been in power since 1900 and had enacted a host of reforms, but I&R, or initiative and referendums, was not apparently a priority. Any state constitutional amendment needed to pass both houses by a 3/5 majority in 2 successive sessions. So it's very difficult to even get an issue on the ballot or something added even onto the ballot by this measure. It's very difficult to do. But it did get on there with an election in between. Only then, after 2 years or more, could it be put on the ballot for ratification by voters. The I&R amendment finally passed both houses in 1911 to 1912 legislature, and the support of Governor Francis E. McGovern, U.S. Senator Robert M. La Follette, and his progressive Republican followers. And the state's socialists. It passed again in 1913 through 14 legislation and was placed on the November 1914 ballot. After 13 years in power, the progressives had become overconfident. In the 1913 legislature, they passed a series of big tax increases to finance an ambitious public works program, as well as giving final approval to a constitutional amendment raising their salaries. This amendment went on the November 14 ballot along with the I&R amendment and 8 others, including one to allow recall of all state elected officials, state elected officers except for judges. After paying higher taxes in 1914, the voters had their fill of liberal reformers and all their works. The amendments on the 1914 ballot offered an easy target for the voters' wrath. Leading candidates of both parties damned all the amendments without informing voters that the initiative referendum and recall amendments offered just the mechanism they needed to block legislation they deplored. The politicians weren't telling the people about those particular items. The politicians weren't letting people know that, because trust me, they were trying to show their that they were unhappy. And trust me, had people been educating them that those things were there, they would have been able to get a more satisfying, payback by voting the people of Wisconsin to have the ability to block and get involved and step in and prevent gross misuses of power. It's unfortunate, but they weren't informing the people of that, and because people were so angry at having to pay higher taxes, they were taking it out on these particular measures. So, let's see here. Let's see. The state Democratic Convention that year disapproved of the I&R and its platform, and Republican gubernatorial candidate Emanuel L. Phillip also urged voters to reject the I&R. So after all that time, when it finally gets on the ballot, you got both sides basically dogging it and not wanting people to know that it would give them exactly some measure of an ability to step in and prevent some of the BS that happens in our political arenas at times. On Election Day, all 10 amendments were defeated overwhelmingly. The voters discriminated hardly at all between them. The least popular amendments won 26% approval, and the most popular won 38% approval. The I&R amendment and the recall amendment were approved by 36% of the voters. Because they decided to vote no on everything, Wisconsin voters in 1914 denied themselves the right to vote on issues of their choice. So 105 years ago, folks, Wisconsin voters took away our present right to petition for changes in our laws and government. Wisconsin needs to join the petition states to allow us to regain control of our civil rights concerning the judicial branch. Politicians will never end immunity for public officials, nor will they ever consider changes to the Chapter 938 Wisconsin's Juvenile and Justice Codes, which strips every Wisconsin child of their federal civil rights. There is the goal, folks, getting the initiative and referendum on a Wisconsin ballot for 2020. So, I mean, I agree. I mean, personally, I think this is a good thing. I think that Wisconsin should have this. The people of Wisconsin should be able to, get together and decide to, do something when they see something going on that they don't like. When they see embarrassing things happening that are making their state look bad, and they see that the people in power are only concerned with covering their own butts and avoiding trouble, and nobody wants to deal with the issues, then they might have a measure of something that the people of Wisconsin can do to shake it up and get things, moving in the right direction. I don't know. I think it's a good thing. Like I said, it's unfortunate that it was voted down back in 1914. It really, truly is. But obviously, the way things were going at the time, it is what it is. It got voted down because people were mad about high taxes. Well, that's the type of thing that pisses people off. High taxes always do that. They piss people off. And, and it's a shame that the politicians at the time were not wanting to let the people who were pissed off, not wanting to let them know that those amendments were exactly what they needed to be able to have a little bit more control over what was happening in their government and in their, legislation. So, just thought that was interesting. Wanted to share that with everybody here today, for everybody to consider. I mean, I can't, and I would stress it again. I mean, not only just for Stephen or Brennan or, for a number of things going on there over in Wisconsin, it's just a good idea. And then, like I said, with the Eagle Nation situation, it still bothers me that a compromised officer was allowed to go and stay involved and to end up, shooting a hostage. Is just not. It's not. I don't think it's a good idea, and I think the people of Wisconsin would be right to rise up and, because maybe they're hoping, just out of hope, that if they ever end up in a hostage situation, that they don't end up getting gunned down by an officer who was hit by a bullet and shouldn't even have been there. If for no other reason than that, then people should. Okay, because that officer who shot the hostage, he had no business being there. He had been hit, and he should have been removed. And if that's not part of the rules or the SOP currently, or the SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure, and if that's not part of the Standard Operating Procedure now, it should be. And I would like to see the residents of Wisconsin make that happen, because it's a tragedy what happened there, and something tells me it'll happen again. So anyway. The post that I was reading from today was put up by my friend Scott, and you all know that I have a pretty strong passion for, youth, the criminal justice youth, the youth in our criminal justice system, essentially, and well, Scott's got cases, with his son is tragic, but also there's a question of whether or not the punishment really fit the crime, type of thing. Scott doesn't deny the fact that his son, did what happened. It was an accident, really. Nobody denies that it happened, or that it is what it is. But the sentencing turned out to be pretty outrageous, and I have been meaning to have Scott here on to talk about it, and I think maybe I will sometime this week. Maybe, or hopefully real soon, I can get together with him, and he can, because he's got some things going on with his son's case right now. Anyway, I think it might be interesting to have a chat with him. So I'll check with him. But it's his post that I was reading from, and like I said, I thought it was a very interesting thing. It was just very interesting to read and to get that kind of insight into, what went down back in 1907 when it first started getting talked about, to 1914 when it got voted down. And So it was quite an interesting process, but I really do think it would be good for Wisconsin to get this back for the people, get it on the books. So anyway, hopefully we'll be talking to Scott real soon. I am intending to speak with somebody related to Eagle Nation's case this week, hopefully one night this week. This person was an investigator for the attorney that was representing Flatoff, who was the guy who came in that day and took the hostages, Brian Flatoff. This person was an investigator for his attorney. A lot of very interesting things that this person had to say when I spoke with them previously. So I should hopefully be having a conversation with that person this week. And so there's some things to look forward to. Like I said, I think this is a really big deal. I think this is advantageous, for the people of Wisconsin, number one, to be able to, get a little bit more involved in what happens in their state and in their politics and their political structure, I should say. All right, so I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. I thought it was very interesting. I actually thought it was very fascinating, especially just taking kind of a snapshot of that time period back in, between 1911 and 1914, when this thing was, this particular initiative was being put on the ballot, and how things went and everything. It's interesting watching the mechanism, how it worked and what happened. Even though it was not the outcome I would prefer, it's still interesting for me. But anyway, so that's about it for today, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see you.